You're here because you can't sleep. Maybe you're restless, mind racing, searching for a story that will hush the chaos and carry you gently into dreams. Maybe you just want to feel something. Fear, wonder, relief, before the night claims you. So, wherever you are, curled up in bed, lights low, phone screen glowing softly in the dark, take a deep breath, let it out slow. You're safe here, for now. I'm the Midnight Echoes, and tonight I have something for you. But before we begin, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what time is it for you? I want you to feel seen, even as we slip into the shadows together. Now, settle in. Pull the covers up. Let your body relax, your eyelids grow heavy. Because the story I'm about to tell, it starts in a place that should have been ordinary, a place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. But tonight, nothing is ordinary. The hidden room in the baker's basement wasn't on any blueprint. It wasn't supposed to exist. But as I stood there, heart pounding, hands trembling, staring at the half-open door I'd just discovered, I knew my life would never be the same. I'd been babysitting for the Bakers for months. Their daughter, Lily, was sweet, a breeze to watch. The house sat in one of those neighborhoods where the lawns are always perfect. The cars in the driveway gleam like trophies, and the mailboxes look like they cost more than my rent. Mr. Baker was always polite, if a little distant. Mrs. Baker, warm and chatty, the kind of woman who remembers your birthday and always has a fresh batch of cookies on the counter. They seemed normal, boring even. But normal people don't have hidden rooms filled with surveillance photos and cryptic documents. It started as a regular Thursday. I arrived at 7 p.m. just as Mr. Baker was heading out. He gave me the usual rundown. Bedtime at 8:30, snacks in the kitchen, call if you need anything. I nodded, already thinking about the history paper I'd work on once Lily was asleep. The evening was uneventful. Lily and I played board games. I read her a story, tucked her in. By 9 p.m., the house was silent. I settled onto the couch, laptop open, ready to lose myself in the French Revolution. That's when I heard it. A faint, mechanical whir drifting up from the basement. At first, I tried to ignore it. Old houses make noises, pipes, heating systems, the usual. But this sound was different. It persisted, soft but insistent, like a secret trying to get my attention. Curiosity got the better of me. I left my laptop on the couch and crept toward the basement door. The noise grew louder as I descended, my hand trailing along the cool concrete wall. The basement was finished, plush carpet, recessed lighting, a massive TV flanked by leather couches, a pool table in the corner. Everything screamed comfort and money. But the sound wasn't coming from any of that. It was coming from behind a bookshelf tucked into the far corner. As I got closer, I noticed a thin line of light peeking out from behind the shelf. My pulse quickened. I ran my fingers along the edge, feeling for anything unusual. There, a small indentation. I pressed it. The bookshelf swung open with a soft click, revealing a door, slightly ajar. The whirring was louder now, coming from inside. I hesitated, hand on the handle, Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't be here, that I should turn around and forget I ever saw this. But curiosity, dangerous, irresistible, overwhelmed my better judgment. I pushed the door open. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet. The walls were lined with computer monitors, each displaying a different feed. Some I recognized: the baker's front yard, their kitchen, Lily's bedroom. Others showed places I didn't know: office buildings, parking lots, the interiors of other homes. In the center of the room, a desk. Papers and photographs scattered across its surface. An open laptop, lines of code scrolling across the screen, the source of the whirring, its fan working overtime. I stepped closer, breath caught in my throat. The photos were a mix of surveillance shots and more personal images. Mr. Baker appeared in many, but he looked different, harder, colder. In some, he was speaking with men in suits. In others, he was handling what looked like large sums of cash. The documents were even more disturbing: financial records, transcripts of phone conversations, detailed schedules of people's daily routines. None of it made sense, but the pit in my stomach told me it was nothing good. I picked up one of the photos, hands shaking. It showed Mr. Baker shaking hands with a man whose face I recognized from the news, a businessman arrested last year for fraud and money laundering. Suddenly, a car door slammed outside. I dropped the photo, heart leaping into my throat. Footsteps on the porch, keys jingling in the lock. They were home, early. Panic surged through me. I had to get out, had to pretend I'd never seen any of this. I rushed out of the hidden room, pulling the door shut behind me. The bookshelf swung back into place with a soft thud. I bolted up the stairs, 2 at a time, voices echoing in the foyer below. I dove onto the couch, laptop in hand, trying to look as if I'd been there all along. My heart hammered so loudly, I was sure they'd hear it. "Oh, hello there," Mrs. Baker's voice, cheerful as ever. "How was Lily?" I looked up, forcing a smile. She was great, went to bed without any fuss. Mr. Baker nodded, hanging up his coat. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw something. A flicker of suspicion, maybe, but it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "Thanks for staying late," he said. "We got caught up at the charity event." I gathered my things, every movement feeling awkward, exaggerated, as if my guilt was written all over me. "No problem at all. I got some studying done." Mrs. Baker handed me a crisp $100 bill. "See you next week?" she asked. I hesitated. Could I come back here knowing what I knew, but refusing would look suspicious? "Of course," I said, pasting on another smile. "Have a good night." The cool night air hit me as I stepped outside. I gulped it down, grateful. My car was parked at the curb, and I forced myself to walk at a normal pace. "Don't run," I told myself. "Act natural." Once inside, I locked the doors and sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel. My mind raced, trying to process what I'd seen. Who were the Bakers, really? What was Mr. Baker involved in? I started the engine, desperate to put distance between myself and that house. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Mr. Baker stood in the doorway, watching me leave. The porch light cast shadows across his face, making him look sinister, unfamiliar. I drove home on autopilot, thoughts a chaotic whirl. What was I supposed to do with this information? Go to the police? But with what evidence? Who would believe a college student babysitter over a respected businessman? When I got home, I double-checked all the locks on my apartment door. I knew I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I sat on my bed, hugging my knees to my chest, trying to think rationally. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Mr. Baker was a private investigator, and this was all for a case. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The cash, the shady meetings, the extensive surveillance, it all pointed to something illegal. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning as my mind conjured up increasingly terrifying scenarios. By morning, I'd made a decision. I couldn't go back to that house. I'd call Mrs. Baker, make up some excuse about my class schedule changing. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than walking back into what felt like a lion's den. But as I reached for my phone, it buzzed with an incoming text. My blood ran cold as I read the message from an unknown number. Enjoyed your little exploration last night. Let's talk. Come to the house at 2:00 p.m. Come alone, or things will get unpleasant for you and your family. My hands shook as I dropped the phone. They knew. Somehow, they knew I'd been in that room. Had there been a hidden camera I hadn't noticed, or had I left some trace of my presence? I thought about running, about packing a bag, and just driving until I couldn't anymore. But the threat hung heavy in my mind. Your family, the text had said. They knew who I was, who my loved ones were. I glanced at the clock. 10 a.m., 4 hours, until I had to face whatever was waiting for me at the baker's house. 4 hours to figure out how I was going to get out of this alive. As I sat there, mind racing, one thing became crystal clear. My life, as I knew it, was over. Whatever happened at 2 p.m., I'd be stepping into a world I never asked to be part of, a world of secrets and dangers I couldn't begin to comprehend. The sunny Thursday evening, when I'd walked into the baker's house, blissfully unaware, felt like a lifetime ago. Now, I was trapped in a nightmare of my own curiosity's making, with no clear way out. I looked out my window at the quiet street below, watching as my neighbors went about their normal lives. How I envied their ignorance, because I knew that in 4 short hours, I'd be facing the consequences of uncovering a truth that was never meant to be found. And I had no idea if I'd survive the encounter. The hours crawled by, every minute thick with dread. I tried to distract myself. Music, TV, even pacing my apartment in endless loops, but nothing could quiet the pounding in my chest. My mind kept circling back to that message, each word echoing with threat. I thought about calling the police, about showing them the text, telling them everything I'd seen. But what would I say? I found a hidden room in my employer's basement, full of surveillance equipment and shady documents, and now I'm being threatened by an unknown number. It sounded like something out of a movie, not real life. And if the Bakers really were as powerful as they seemed, what if the police were already on their side? What if going to them only made things worse? I checked the windows, scanned the street for unfamiliar cars or faces. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The kind of normal that hides secrets in plain sight. I tried to eat something, but my stomach twisted at the thought. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the clock, watching the seconds tick away. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. Don't be late. A chill ran through me. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, to run and never look back. But I was trapped. They knew where I lived. They knew about my family. I had no choice but to go. At 1:30 p.m., I grabbed my keys, slipped on a jacket, and forced myself out the door. The world outside was bright, birds singing, kids riding bikes down the sidewalk. Everything looked so peaceful, so safe. It felt like a cruel joke. The drive to the baker's house felt like a funeral procession. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see a car tailing me. But the road behind me was empty, stretching out like a promise I'd never keep. When I pulled up to the house, I sat in my car for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The house looked the same as always. Neat lawn, cheerful flowers, the American dream painted in perfect pastels. But now, it felt like a trap. I forced myself to get out, to walk up the path, to ring the doorbell. My heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear the chime. The door swung open almost immediately. Mr. Baker stood there, his face unreadable. He stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. Right on time, he said, voice calm and measured. Too calm. I stepped inside, the air suddenly thick and heavy. The house was silent, no sign of Lily, no sign of Mrs. Baker, just the two of us, alone. He closed the door behind me, the click echoing like a gunshot. Let's go downstairs, he said, already moving toward the basement. I followed, legs shaking, every instinct screaming at me to run. The basement was exactly as I remembered. Plush carpet, expensive furniture, the faint scent of vanilla from a candle burning on the side table. But the bookshelf in the corner was already open, revealing the hidden door. Mr. Baker led the way, and I followed him into the secret room. The monitors were on, the laptop still humming, the same photos, the same documents. Nothing had changed. He turned to face me, arms crossed over his chest. For a moment, he just looked at me, as if weighing his options. You're probably wondering why you're here, he said finally. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. You weren't supposed to find this. No one was. But now that you have, we have a problem. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. I didn't mean to. He held up a hand, cutting me off. Doesn't matter. What matters is what happens next. He paced the small room, eyes flicking from the monitors to me and back again. You're smart, curious. That's dangerous in my line of work. I tried to keep my voice steady. What is your line of work? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let's just say I handle things for people who can't afford to get their hands dirty. Information, leverage, favors, sometimes surveillance, sometimes more. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. You saw things you shouldn't have. Names, faces, transactions, things that could ruin lives, mine included. I took a shaky breath. What do you want from me? He studied me for a long moment, as if deciding whether I was worth the risk. I want your silence, he said finally, and I want to know I can trust you. I shook my head, fear rising in my throat. I won't tell anyone, I swear. He laughed, low and bitter. People always say that, but fear makes people do stupid things, so I need a guarantee. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small device, a recorder. He pressed a button, and my own voice filled the room, shaky and terrified. I found the room. I saw everything. I know what you're doing. He stopped the recording and looked at me. I have copies. If anything happens to me, or if you talk to anyone, this goes to the authorities, and not just them, your family, your friends, your school, everyone. My blood ran cold. He had me trapped, completely and utterly. He leaned back, satisfied. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home, and you're going to forget any of this ever happened. You're going to keep living your life, and I'm going to keep living mine. If you ever breathe a word of this to anyone, you know what happens. He stepped aside, gesturing to the door. You can go. I stumbled out of the room, up the stairs, out of the house. The sunlight felt harsh, the world too bright, too real. I got into my car and drove, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. My mind raced, replaying every word, every threat. I was trapped, a prisoner of my own curiosity. I couldn't go to the police. I couldn't tell anyone. I was alone. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside my window. Every creak, every footstep, every passing car made me jump. I was sure I was being watched, that at any moment, Mr. Baker, or someone worse, would come for me. Sleep was impossible. My mind spun with fear and regret. I'd stumbled into a world I didn't understand, and now I was paying the price. But as the hours passed, a new feeling began to creep in. Not hope, exactly, but something like determination. I couldn't let him control me. I couldn't live my life in fear. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't just walk away. Some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some nightmares are impossible to escape. Night pressed in, thick and suffocating. My apartment, once a haven, now felt like a cage. Every shadow seemed to crawl. Every whisper of wind against the window made me flinch. I lay there, rigid beneath my blanket, heart thumping so loud I could almost hear it echo off the walls. Sleep was a distant memory, replaced by the gnawing certainty that nothing would ever be the same. I tried to remember the details, every face on those monitors, every document on that desk. My mind replayed the scene again and again, as if searching for a clue, a loophole, a way out. But all I found was fear, the kind that settles deep in your bones and refuses to leave. At 3 a.m., my phone vibrated. I stared at it, afraid to look, afraid not to. The screen glowed with a new message. Unknown number, sleep well. I dropped the phone, breath catching in my throat. They were watching. They knew everything. I curled tighter, pulling the blanket over my head like a child. But I was no child. Not anymore. Not after what I'd seen. The hours dragged on. Dawn crept in slowly, painting my room in pale blue. I got up, showered, dressed, moving through the motions like a ghost. Outside, the world was waking up. Cars starting, birds singing, neighbors waving as they left for work. I envied their ignorance, their blissful unawareness. I wondered if I'd ever feel safe again. I tried to eat breakfast, but the food tasted like ash. My hands shook as I poured coffee, the mug clinking against the counter. I stared at my reflection in the window, pale, hollow-eyed, a stranger looking back. I had to do something, anything. I couldn't let Mr. Baker hold this over me forever, but what choice did I have? If I went to the police, he'd ruin me. If I stayed silent, I'd never sleep again. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. News articles, public records, anything I could find about the Bakers. There was nothing. No scandals, no criminal records, not even a whisper of suspicion. They were clean, untouchable. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew the truth. I scrolled through forums, desperate for advice. How do you escape someone who has leverage over you? How do you fight back when you're powerless? The answers were always the same. Disappear, start over, hope they forget you. But I couldn't leave my family. I couldn't run forever. I closed the laptop, rubbing my eyes. My thoughts spiraled, dark and frantic. I needed help, someone I could trust. One name kept coming to mind. Jenna. Jenna had been my best friend since high school. She was smart, resourceful, unafraid to dig into things most people would rather ignore. If anyone could help me, it was her. But telling her would put her in danger too. I hesitated, fingers hovering over my phone. Was it fair to drag her into this? Was it fair to keep this secret, knowing what might happen if I slipped up? In the end, fear won out. I needed someone on my side. I needed to say the words out loud, to make them real. I texted her, "Can we talk? It's important." She replied almost instantly, "Of course. My place or yours? Yours. I'll be there in 30. I grabbed my bag and left, locking the door behind me. The walk to Jenna's apartment was short, but every step felt like a marathon. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see Mr. Baker's car creeping up behind me. Jenna opened the door before I could knock. Her face was full of concern. "Hey, you look awful. What's going on?" I stepped inside, the familiar smell of coffee and vanilla candles wrapping around me like a hug. I sat on her couch, hands twisting in my lap. She sat beside me, waiting. I took a deep breath, then told her everything. The babysitting job, the hidden room, the surveillance, the threats. I left nothing out. By the end, my voice was shaking, tears stinging my eyes. Jenna listened in silence, her face growing more serious with every word. When I finished, she reached over and squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out," she said. "You're not alone." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. For the first time since I'd found the room, I felt a flicker of hope. Jenna was already in motion, grabbing her laptop, pulling up search engines. "Let's see what we can find. If he's as careful as you say, there won't be much, but everyone slips up eventually." We spent hours digging. Social media, property records, old news clippings. Most of it was useless, but then Jenna found something. A name, buried in a decades-old article, Daniel Baker, involved in a financial scandal in another state. The charges had been dropped, the record sealed, but the connection was there. Jenna leaned back, her eyes shining with excitement. He's not as clean as he wants people to think. There's a pattern here. We just have to find it. A plan began to form. We'd gather evidence, real evidence, photos, recordings, anything that could prove what I'd seen. If we could build a case, maybe we could go to the authorities without risking everything. But as the sun set, my phone buzzed again. Another message, another threat. You have a friend now. Be careful who you trust. I stared at the screen, ice flooding my veins. They knew. Somehow, they always knew. Jenna read the message over my shoulder, her face hardening. We're in this together now, she said. No backing out. I nodded, fear and determination warring inside me. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if we'd make it out alive. But I knew one thing for certain. The nightmare was just beginning. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were listening. Jenna's words echoed in the air, a promise and a warning at once. We're in this together now. No backing out. I tried to steady my breathing, but every inhale felt jagged, every exhale laced with dread. The message on my phone glared up at me, a silent threat that burrowed under my skin. You have a friend now. Be careful who you trust. Jenna's eyes met mine, fierce and unwavering. We're not letting him scare us off. That's what he wants, but we have to be smart. No more texting about this. No emails, no calls. If he's watching, we need to act like we've dropped it. She closed her laptop, the click of the lid final, decisive. From now on, we meet in person, only here, only when we're sure we're not being followed. I nodded, my throat tight. But how do we know? What if he's tracking everything? Jenna's lips pressed into a thin line. We'll be careful. We'll use burner phones, public Wi-Fi, whatever it takes. But first, you need to get some rest. You look like you haven't slept in days. I almost laughed. Sleep felt impossible, a luxury for someone else's life. But Jenna was right. I needed to be clear-headed if we were going to survive this. She walked me to the door, her hand lingering on my shoulder. Go home, lock your doors, don't do anything out of the ordinary. Tomorrow, we start digging for real. I stepped out into the night, the air cool against my skin. The city was quieter now, the hum of traffic fading into the distance. I walked quickly, every shadow a potential threat, every footstep behind me a reason to glance back. When I reached my apartment, I double-locked the door and checked every window. I turned off my phone and hid it in a drawer, just in case. Then I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. My mind spun with questions. How much did Mr. Baker know? How far would he go to protect his secrets? Was I putting Jenna in danger just by involving her? The hours crawled by, my thoughts swirling in endless circles. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and I drifted into a restless sleep. I woke to the sound of birds outside my window, sunlight creeping across the floor. For a moment, I forgot everything. For a moment, I was just a college student with a normal life. Then the memories crashed back. Mr. Baker, the hidden room, the threats. Fear settled over me like a second skin. I got up, showered, dressed in the same clothes as yesterday. I moved through my morning routine on autopilot, every action mechanical, every thought clouded by anxiety. At noon, I left my apartment, making sure to take a different route to Jenna's. I ducked into crowded stores, changed direction twice, and paused at every intersection to check for anyone following me. Paranoia gnawed at me, but I couldn't risk leading anyone to her. When I finally reached her building, Jenna was waiting by the door. She ushered me inside, locking it behind us. "Any problems?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't think so, but I can't be sure." She handed me a burner phone, still in its packaging. "From now on, we use these. No personal info, no contacts. If you need me, call from a payphone or text from this. Destroy it if you think it's compromised." I nodded, tucking it into my pocket. "What's the plan?" Jenna pulled out a notebook, the pages already filled with notes and sketches. "We need evidence, real evidence. Photos, video, audio, anything that proves what you saw. We need to get back into that room." The thought made my stomach lurch. He'll be watching. He'll know if I come back. Jenna's eyes narrowed. Maybe, but he can't watch everything all the time. We just have to be smarter than him. She outlined a plan, simple but risky. I'd accept another babysitting job, act like nothing was wrong. While I was there, I'd wear a hidden camera Jenna had borrowed from a friend in the film department. I'd try to get footage of the room, the documents, anything incriminating. "If you get caught," Jenna started, her voice trailing off. I finished for her. "It's over, for both of us." She nodded. "But if we don't try, he wins, and you'll never be free." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the plan settling over us. I tried to steady my nerves, to remind myself why I was doing this. Not just for me, but for everyone else Mr. Baker might hurt. Jenna squeezed my hand. "You can do this. I believe in you." Her faith gave me strength I didn't know I had. That night, I texted Mrs. Baker from my old phone, forcing my hands to stay steady. "Hi, I can babysit next Thursday if you still need me." The reply came quickly. "That would be wonderful. Same time as before?" "Yes. See you then." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. There was no turning back now. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Jenna and I met every day, refining the plan, testing the camera, rehearsing what I'd say if anyone got suspicious. I barely slept, my dreams haunted by images of hidden rooms and cold, watchful eyes. Finally, Thursday arrived. I dressed carefully, nothing out of the ordinary, just jeans and a sweater. The camera was hidden in a button on my shirt, the battery pack taped to my side. Jenna hugged me before I left, whispering, "Be careful. I'll be watching my phone all night. If anything goes wrong, call me." I nodded, trying to swallow my fear. The drive to the baker's house felt endless. Every turn, every stoplight, every passing car set my nerves on edge. When I pulled up to the familiar driveway, I forced myself to breathe, to smile, to act normal. Mrs. Baker greeted me at the door, her face as warm and friendly as ever. "Thank you so much for coming. Lily's been looking forward to seeing you." I smiled, my voice steady. "I'm happy to be here." Inside, the house was just as I remembered. Perfect, peaceful, hiding secrets in every shadow. As the Bakers left, I waved goodbye, my heart pounding in my chest. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and I was alone. Or so I hoped. The house was silent, save for the distant hum of the refrigerator and the muffled ticking of a wall clock. I walked through the rooms, my footsteps barely making a sound on the polished hardwood. Every movement felt magnified, every breath loud in the hush. I reminded myself, act normal, just another night, just another babysitting job. Lily was in her room, coloring at her little desk. She looked up and grinned when I peeked in. "Hi," she chirped, waving a crayon in the air. "Hey, Lily, want a snack before bed?" My voice sounded calm, even cheerful. I marveled at my own performance. She nodded, hopping up and skipping past me toward the kitchen. I followed, forcing my hands to stop trembling. I made her a plate of apple slices and peanut butter, just like always. We sat at the table, the kitchen light warm and golden, as if nothing in the world could go wrong. But under the surface, my mind was racing. I kept glancing at the clock, counting down the minutes until Lily's bedtime. Every second brought me closer to the moment I'd have to go back down to the basement, back into the darkness, back into the secret room. After snack time, I read Lily her favorite story and tucked her into bed. She hugged her stuffed rabbit and yawned, eyelids drooping. I kissed her forehead, turned on her nightlight, and whispered, "Sweet dreams." "Good night," she mumbled, already half asleep. I closed her door softly and leaned against the wall, letting out a shaky breath. My heart thudded in my chest, adrenaline burning in my veins. This was it. I crept down the hall, pausing at the top of the basement stairs. The house was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Mr. Baker standing in the shadows, watching me. But the hallway was empty. I slipped down the stairs, careful to avoid the creaky step near the bottom. The basement was exactly as I remembered. Soft carpet, expensive furniture, the faint scent of vanilla lingering in the air. The bookshelf in the corner looked perfectly ordinary, but I knew better. I crossed the room, every nerve on edge. My fingers found the small indentation behind the shelf. I pressed it, and the bookshelf swung open with a gentle click. The hidden door waited, slightly ajar. I hesitated, fear prickling along my spine. What if there was a camera I'd missed? What if Mr. Baker was watching right now, waiting for me to make a mistake? I swallowed hard and slipped inside. The secret room was cold, the air heavy with the hum of electronics. The monitors glowed in the dim light, displaying feeds from around the house and from places I didn't recognize. The desk was cluttered with papers, photos, and a laptop, its screen alive with scrolling code. I took a deep breath and started recording. The camera in my shirt button blinked to life. capturing everything I saw. I moved slowly, careful not to disturb anything, careful not to leave a trace. I filmed the monitors, zooming in on the unfamiliar faces and locations. I filmed the documents on the desk, financial records, transcripts, lists of names and dates. I filmed the laptop screen, the lines of code, the folders labeled with cryptic titles. My hands shook as I picked up a photograph. It showed Mr. Baker with a group of men, all of them wearing suits, their faces hard and expressionless. I recognized one of them from the news, a local politician recently embroiled in a corruption scandal. I set the photo down, my pulse racing. I had to get as much as I could, as quickly as I could. Every second in this room felt like a lifetime. Suddenly, a noise upstairs, a door closing, footsteps in the hallway. Panic surged through me. I froze, listening, heart pounding in my ears. Had the Bakers come home early? Had someone else entered the house? I slipped out of the secret room, pulling the bookshelf clugged behind me. I crept up the stairs, moving as quietly as I could. At the top, I pressed myself against the wall, listening. The footsteps were coming from Lily's room. I hurried down the hall, forcing myself to walk, not run. I pushed open her door and found her sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "I heard a noise," she whispered, her voice small and scared. I forced a smile, my heart still racing. "It was probably just the wind. You're safe, I promise." She nodded, lying back down. I tucked her in again, smoothing her hair away from her face. "Go back to sleep, Lily. I'm right here." She closed her eyes, her breathing slowing. I sat with her until I was sure she was asleep, then slipped out of the room. Back in the hallway, I leaned against the wall, shaking with relief. I checked the time, only an hour until the Bakers would be home. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, pretending to watch TV, my mind replaying every moment in the secret room. Had I missed anything? Had I left any evidence behind? Was the camera still recording when the Bakers finally returned? I forced a smile, thanked them for the night, and left as quickly as I could. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp. I hurried to my car, hands trembling as I unlocked the door. I drove straight to Jenna's apartment, my thoughts a tangled mess of fear and adrenaline. She was waiting for me, her face pale with worry. I handed her the camera, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I got it. Everything. I think." Jenna hugged me, holding on tight. "You did it. You're safe." But as I stood there in the dark, the weight of what I'd done settled over me. I wasn't safe. Not really. Not yet. We had evidence now, proof, but we were still trapped in Mr. Baker's web, still playing his game, and somewhere in the shadows, I knew he was watching, waiting. Jenna and I sat in her living room, the glow from her laptop screen flickering across our faces. The camera was on the table between us, still warm from where it had been pressed against my skin. My hands trembled as I unclipped the battery pack, passing it to Jenna with a look that said everything I couldn't say out loud. She worked quickly, transferring the video files to her computer. We watched in silence as the footage played out, the hidden room, the monitors, the documents. the faces frozen in digital clarity. My own voice, barely a whisper, narrating what I saw. Every frame felt like a confession, a secret dragged into the light. Jenna paused the video on a shot of the desk. "Look at this," she said, zooming in on a stack of papers. "That logo, do you recognize it?" I leaned closer. It was a crest, ornate and unfamiliar, stamped in red at the top of the page. "No, but it looks official. Government, maybe?" She nodded, her brow furrowed. "Or something pretending to be. I'll dig into it." We kept watching, cataloging every detail. Names, dates, faces, numbers. Jenna took notes, her handwriting tight and hurried. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting to the sound of footsteps in Lily's room, the way my heart had nearly stopped when I thought someone was in the house. When the footage ended, Jenna sat back, rubbing her eyes. "This is huge. If even half of this is real, Mr. Baker isn't just some small-time crook. He's connected, maybe even dangerous." A shiver ran through me. What do we do now? Jenna's gaze was steady, determined. We need backup. Someone who can help us make sense of this. Someone who knows how to handle evidence, how to protect us if things go bad. I hesitated. "Who?" She hesitated too, then said, "My cousin, Eric. He's a journalist, investigative. He's helped people in trouble before, whistleblowers, victims, people who needed to stay off the radar. If anyone can help us, it's him." The thought of bringing someone else in made my stomach twist. But what choice did we have? The more I thought about it, the more I realized we were in over our heads. We needed someone who understood how these things worked, someone who could see the bigger picture. Jenna pulled out her burner phone and typed a message, her fingers flying over the keys. She kept it vague, just enough to get Eric's attention without tipping anyone off. "He'll meet us tomorrow," she said, slipping the phone back into her pocket. "Somewhere public, safe." I nodded, exhaustion crashing over me in waves. My body ached, my mind buzzing with fear and adrenaline. I should go home, try to sleep. Jenna hugged me tight. "Lock your doors. Don't answer if anyone knocks. Call me if anything feels off." I promised I would, though I doubted I'd get any rest. My apartment felt colder than usual, the shadows deeper, the silence heavier. I checked every lock, every window, then crawled into bed fully dressed, my phone clutched in my hand. Sleep came in fits and starts, fragmented dreams of hidden rooms, shadowy figures, and Lily's frightened eyes. I woke before dawn, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. For a moment, I lay there, listening. The world outside was quiet, too quiet. I got up, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked older, somehow, worn down, haunted. My eyes flicked to the window, half expecting to see someone watching from the street. Nothing but darkness. I forced myself to eat a piece of toast, though it tasted like cardboard. I replayed the plan in my head. Meet Jenna, meet Eric, hand over the footage, get help, get safe. It sounded so simple, but nothing about this was simple anymore. The city was waking up as I made my way to the cafe where we'd agreed to meet. The air was crisp, the sky streaked with pale gold. I kept my head down, my hood up, eyes scanning every face I passed. Jenna was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window. She looked tired but resolute, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. She smiled when she saw me, a flicker of warmth in the cold morning. Eric arrived a few minutes later. He was older than us, with sharp eyes and a calm, measured way of speaking. He slid into the booth, glanced around, and said quietly, "Jenna told me you have something important, something dangerous." I nodded, sliding the USB drive across the table. "Watch this, and tell us what you think." He plugged it into his laptop and watched in silence, his face unreadable. When the video ended, he closed the laptop and looked at us, his expression grave. "This is bad," he said. "Really bad. You have no idea how deep this goes." A chill ran through me. What should we do? Eric leaned in, his voice low. "First, you both need to disappear for a while. Lay low. Don't go home. Don't use your phones. Don't talk to anyone you don't trust completely. I'll take this to someone I know, someone who can protect you." Jenna's eyes widened. "Is it really that dangerous?" He nodded. "These people don't mess around. They have resources, connections, eyes everywhere. If they know you have this, you're in serious danger." My pulse hammered in my ears. What about my family? What if they go after them? Eric's gaze softened. "I'll make sure they're warned, but you need to focus on staying safe. That's the only way you can help anyone." The weight of it all settled over me, crushing and absolute. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run, but I forced myself to nod, to accept the reality of what we were facing. Eric scribbled an address on a napkin. "Go here. It's a safe house. Stay there until I contact you. Don't trust anyone else, not even the police." We stood, gathering our things. Jenna squeezed my hand, her grip strong and steady. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "We have to." As we walked out into the morning light, I felt the world shift beneath my feet. The line between safety and danger, between night and day, had blurred beyond recognition. And somewhere in the city, I knew Mr. Baker was watching, waiting for us to slip. But for the first time, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt hope. The city felt different as we moved through it, like the air itself was charged, every shadow a potential threat. Jenna and I stuck close, our steps hurried, eyes darting to every passing car, every stranger's glance. The napkin with the safe house address was folded tightly in my palm, already damp with sweat. We didn't talk much as we walked. There was nothing left to say. Every word felt dangerous, every moment a test of our resolve. At one point, Jenna squeezed my arm, her silent reassurance grounding me as the world spun on. We took a circuitous route, ducking into alleys, weaving through crowds, doubling back on our own tracks. Jenna's paranoia was infectious, but I knew it was necessary. Eric's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone, not even the police. The safe house was in a quiet neighborhood, tucked between a row of old brick buildings. It looked unremarkable, just another door, another stoop, another slice of anonymity in a city built on secrets. Jenna knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. The door opened a crack, a pair of wary eyes peering out before swinging open wider. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and old wood. Heavy curtains blocked out the sun, casting the rooms in a dim, perpetual twilight. There was a living room with mismatched furniture, a tiny kitchen, 2 bedrooms. It felt like a place that had seen too many stories, too many people on the run. We dropped our bags in the corner and collapsed onto the couch. For a moment, we just sat there, letting the silence settle around us. My heart was still racing, my hands still shaking, but for the first time in days, I felt a sliver of safety. Jenna broke the silence. "We'll be okay here. Eric wouldn't send us somewhere he didn't trust." I nodded, though doubt gnawed at me. "How long do you think we'll have to stay?" She shrugged, her eyes dark with worry. "As long as it takes, until Eric says it's safe." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The reality of our situation pressed in on me. No phones, no contact with the outside world, no way to know what was happening beyond these walls. We were ghosts now, shadows hiding from the light. The hours dragged on. We passed the time with whispered conversations, trying to distract ourselves from the fear. Jenna found a deck of cards in a drawer, and we played game after game, our laughter forced and brittle. Every sound from the street made us freeze, listening for footsteps, for voices, for any sign that we'd been found. As night fell, the safe house grew colder. Jenna curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. I paced the floor, unable to sit still, my mind racing with possibilities. What if Eric couldn't help us? What if Mr. Baker found us first? What if we never got our lives back? I tried to remember the feeling of normalcy, the comfort of my own bed, the warmth of sunlight on my face, the simple joy of a day without fear. It felt impossibly distant, like a dream I'd once had and forgotten. Jenna's voice broke through my thoughts. "We'll get through this," she said softly, her eyes shining in the dim light. "We have to believe that." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know. I don't know how much longer I can do this." She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "You're stronger than you think. We both are." We sat like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the 2 fugitives hiding in its shadows. That night, sleep came in snatches, broken by nightmares and the creak of the old house settling. I dreamed of the hidden room, of Mr. Baker's cold eyes watching me from the darkness. I woke with a start, heart pounding, sweat slick on my skin. Jenna was already up, pacing the kitchen with a mug of coffee clutched in her hands. She looked at me, her face pale and drawn. "Couldn't sleep?" I shook my head, rubbing my eyes. "It's like he's here, like he's always watching." She nodded, her jaw set. "That's what he wants, to make us feel powerless. But we're not. We have the evidence. We have Eric." Her words helped, but only a little. I forced myself to eat a piece of toast, though it turned to ash in my mouth. The hours crawled by, each one heavier than the last. In the afternoon, there was a knock at the door, 3 times, then twice more. Jenna and I froze, fear crackling between us. She crept to the peephole, her body tense. "It's Eric," she whispered, relief flooding her voice. She opened the door, and Eric slipped inside, locking it behind him. He looked tired, his clothes rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. "I've been digging," he said, dropping a folder onto the table. "You were right to be afraid. Baker isn't just some criminal. He's part of a niche network. Blackmail, surveillance, political manipulation. He's connected to people in power, people who can make problems disappear." My stomach twisted. What do we do? Eric looked at us, his gaze hard. "We go public, carefully. I have contacts at a major news outlet, people I trust. If we get this story out, if we shine a light on what Baker's doing, it'll be harder for him to silence you. But it's risky. Once this goes live, there's no going back." Jenna squeezed my hand, her eyes searching mine. "Are you ready for this?" I took a deep breath, fear and determination warring inside me. "I don't want to be afraid anymore. Let's do it." Eric nodded, a grim smile on his lips. "Good. I'll set it up. In the meantime, stay here, stay quiet, and be ready." As he left, the weight of our decision settled over me. We were stepping into the light, risking everything for the truth. And somewhere, in the darkness, I knew Mr. Baker was waiting. But this time, I wasn't running. The hours after Eric left stretched on, thick with tension and anticipation. Jenna and I barely spoke, each lost in our own thoughts, the gravity of what we'd agreed to pressing down on us. The safe house felt even smaller now, the walls closing in as we waited for Eric's next message, waited for our lives to change forever. I sat by the window, peeking through a gap in the heavy curtains. The street outside was quiet, washed in the orange glow of streetlights. Every car that passed made my heart jump. Every distant voice sent a chill up my spine. I wondered if Mr. Baker already knew what we were planning. I wondered if he was out there, watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. Jenna paced the living room, her phone clutched tight in her hand, though it had been powered off for hours. She kept glancing at the clock, chewing her lip until it bled. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would all be okay. But the words stuck in my throat, hollow and unconvincing. Finally, just after midnight, there was a soft knock at the door. 3 times, pause, then twice more. The code. My pulse quickened as Jenna hurried to the peephole. "It's Eric," she whispered, relief and fear mingling in her voice. She opened the door, and Eric slipped inside, moving quickly, his face drawn and tense. He carried a small bag and a folder thick with papers. "We have to move fast," he said, voice low. "The story goes live at 6 a.m. I've encrypted the files and sent them to my editor. Multiple backups, multiple locations. Once it's out, there's no way to stop it." Jenna and I exchanged a look. Fear, hope, disbelief all tangled together. Eric set the folder on the table and unzipped the bag, pulling out 2 burner phones and a pair of baseball caps. "You need to disappear for a few days. I've arranged a ride. someone I trust. You'll go to a motel outside the city, lay low until the dust settles. I nodded, my hands trembling. What about our families? What if Baker? Eric cut me off, his voice gentle but firm. I've already warned them. They're being watched, but discreetly. No one's making a move yet. Once the story breaks, Baker will be too busy covering his own tracks to come after you. Jenna took one of the phones, her jaw set. What if he tries anyway? Eric's eyes were hard. Then we have more evidence, more leverage. The world will be watching. That's our best protection now. We packed quickly, grabbing only what we needed. Eric led us out the back door, through an alley, and into a waiting car. The driver was a woman in her 40s, her face calm and unreadable. She nodded as we climbed in, then pulled away from the curb without a word. The city slipped past in silence, neon and shadow flickering across the windows. I pressed my forehead to the glass, watching the familiar streets fall away, replaced by highways and empty fields. The farther we got from the city, the more surreal it all felt, like we were being erased, our old lives dissolving behind us. Jenna reached over, squeezing my hand. Her touch was warm, steady, a lifeline in the darkness. The motel was small, tucked off a deserted road, the kind of places no one would look for us. The driver handed us a key and a slip of paper with a number to call if anything went wrong. Eric's voice echoed in my mind. Stay hidden, stay quiet, wait for my call. We locked the door behind us and collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion washing over us in waves. For the first time in days, I let myself cry, silent, shaking sobs that left me empty and raw. Jenna held me, her own tears soaking into my shoulder. We did it, she whispered, though her voice trembled. We made it this far. I nodded, wiping my eyes. Do you think it'll work? Do you think people will believe us? She pulled bow on, her eyes fierce. They have to. We have proof. We have the truth. But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at me. What if Baker's reach was longer than we thought? What if the story was buried, twisted, forgotten? What if we'd risked everything for nothing? Sleep came in fits and starts, haunted by dreams of hidden rooms and cold, watchful eyes. I woke before dawn, the sky outside still dark, the world holding its breath. Jenna was already up, sitting by the window, watching the empty parking lot. She turned as I approached, her face pale but determined. It's almost time, she said, glancing at the clock. 5:45 a.m. We sat together in silence, waiting for the world to change. At 6:02 a.m., Jenna's burner phone buzzed. A single message from Eric. It's out. Stay put. We stared at each other, the weight of those words settling over us. It's out. The truth, finally free. I pulled up the news site on the motel's battered laptop. The headline blared across the screen. Local businessman tied to blackmail, surveillance ring, evidence uncovered by whistleblowers. My hands shook as I scrolled through the article, photos from the hidden room, screenshots of documents, names, dates, faces. The story was everywhere. Social media, news feeds, even television. The world was watching. Jenna laughed, a wild, disbelieving sound. We did it. Oh my God, We actually did it. Relief crashed over me, fierce and overwhelming. But beneath it, fear still lingered. Baker wasn't finished, not yet. As the sun rose, painting the sky in gold and pink, I realized we'd crossed a threshold. There was no going back. We were free, but the nightmare wasn't over. Not yet. The motel room felt different now. The air was still heavy, but the fear had changed. No longer the suffocating dread of being hunted in the dark, but the anxious, breathless tension of waiting for the world to react. Jenna and I sat side by side on the faded bedspread, the laptop open between us, the news story still glowing on the screen. We watched as the story exploded across social media. Comments poured in, some in disbelief, some in outrage, some in support. People were sharing the article, tagging local officials, demanding answers. The video footage from my hidden camera was already being dissected frame by frame by internet sleuths, every detail analyzed, every face scrutinized. Jenna scrolled through the comments, her hands trembling. Look at this. People are already connecting the dots. Baker's business partners, the politicians in those photos. It's like a wildfire. I nodded, a strange mix of pride and terror swirling in my chest. Do you think it's enough? Will they actually do something? She looked at me, her eyes wide and hopeful. They have to. There's no way to bury this now. Too many people have seen it. But even as she spoke, my phone buzzed, one of the burners Eric had given us. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway, my voice barely above a whisper. Hello? Eric's voice was tight, urgent. You two need to stay inside. There's a lot of noise right now. Media, police, even federal agents. Baker's on the move. He hasn't been arrested yet, but they're watching him. Don't trust anyone who shows up, no matter what they say. My heart skipped. What about our families? They're safe. I have people watching them, but you need to lay low until I say otherwise. Understand? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. We understand. Jenna listened in, her face pale. When I hung up, she asked, "What did he say?" I repeated Eric's warning. Jenna's jaw clenched, but she nodded. We'll stay put. We've come too far to mess up now. The day crawled by in a haze of adrenaline and exhaustion. Every hour brought new updates. Baker's office raided, his associates questioned, politicians scrambling to distance themselves. News vans crowded the street outside Baker's house, reporters shouting questions at anyone who came or went. But there was no word of an arrest, no sign that Baker himself had been found. Jenna and I drifted through the day, too wired to sleep, too tired to talk. We watched the news, ate cold cereal from the motel vending machine, jumped at every sound outside our door. By evening, the world outside had changed. Protesters gathered outside City Hall, holding signs, chanting for justice. The mayor gave a press conference promising a full investigation. Online, people shared stories of their own, strange encounters, rumors of blackmail, whispers of a network that had always seemed just out of sight. Jenna sat on the edge of the bed, her knees pulled to her chest. "It's working," she whispered, almost to herself. "People are listening." I nodded, but my thoughts kept circling back to Baker. Where was he? What would he do now that his secrets were exposed? As night fell, the motel room felt smaller than ever. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Jenna's slow, steady breathing. My mind replayed everything, finding the hidden room, the threats, the fear, the impossible choices. I wondered if I'd ever feel truly safe again. The next morning, Eric called again. His voice was softer, but still edged with caution. They're closing in on Baker. He's trying to run, but they're watching every move. You two need to hang tight for a little longer. Once he's in custody, I'll come get you. Relief and anxiety warred inside me. How much longer? A day, maybe two, just stay invisible. After I hung up, Jenna and I tried to pass the time. We played cards, watched old movies on the motel TV, made lists of all the things we wanted to do once we were free, but the tension never left. Every knock at a door, every car in the parking lot set our nerves on edge. That night, as we sat in silence, Jenna reached for my hand. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought we'd get this far. I thought he'd find us. I thought..." She broke off, her voice trembling. I squeezed her hand, my own eyes stinging. Me too. But we did. We made it. She smiled, a real smile this time, small but fierce. "Whatever happens next, I'm glad I did it with you." We sat together in the darkness, holding on to each other, waiting for the world to change. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time, Eric's voice was triumphant. "They got him. Baker's in custody. It's over." I felt the tension drain out of me, leaving me lightheaded, almost dizzy. Jenna let out a shaky laugh, tears streaming down her face. Eric's voice softened. "I'm coming to get you. You'll be safe now. You did something incredible. You changed everything." As I hung up, I looked at Jenna, my heart full to bursting. We'd survived the nightmare. We'd brought the truth into the light, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe in tomorrow. The hours after Eric's call passed in a strange, weightless blur. Jenna and I barely moved from the bed, afraid to believe it was truly over. We watched the news, numb with exhaustion and relief, as the world reacted to Baker's arrest. His mugshot flashed across every channel, his name now synonymous with scandal and betrayal. The city buzzed with speculation, anger, and a sense of justice long overdue. Eric arrived just after noon, his familiar knock, 3 times, pause, 2 more, breaking the tension that had held us captive for days. When Jenna opened the door, he stepped inside with a tired but genuine smile. "You did it," he said, his voice warm and proud. "You both did." Jenna hugged him first, then me. For a moment, we just stood there, holding on, letting the relief wash over us. I felt the tears come again, but this time they were different. Cleansing, cathartic, the final storm after a long, dark night. Eric led us out to his car, careful to check the lot for any lingering threats. The drive back to the city was quiet. The world outside changed in subtle ways. I watched the landscape roll by, every tree and building sharper, more real, as if I were seeing it all for the first time. We stopped at a small diner on the edge of town, tucked into a corner booth where no one would recognize us. Eric ordered us breakfast, pancakes, eggs, coffee, strong enough to chase away the last of the fear. For the first time in days, I tasted food, really tasted it, and realized how hungry I was for life again. Jenna laughed at something Eric said, the sound light and free. I joined in, surprised at how easy it felt to smile. The world was still dangerous, still uncertain, but for this moment, we were safe, we were together. After breakfast, Eric drove us to a friend's apartment, a place where we could rest, shower, and finally sleep in real beds. He promised to keep us updated on everything, the investigation, the fallout, the next steps. We had choices now, he said. We could testify, go public, or simply disappear and start over. Jenna and I talked about it late into the night, weighing our options. The idea of returning to our old lives felt impossible. Too much had changed. We were different now, stronger, sharper, marked by what we'd survived. I don't think I could ever go back to normal, Jenna said, her voice soft in the darkness. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're meant for something more. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. We did something no one else could. We made a difference. She smiled, reaching for my hand. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The next morning, Eric brought more news. The investigation had already led to more arrests, politicians, business leaders, even a few police officers. The network Baker had built was unraveling, piece by piece, exposed by the evidence we'd risked everything to gather. The media wanted interviews. Advocacy groups reached out, offering support and protection. Our story had become a symbol, a warning, a rallying cry, a testament to the power of speaking out. Jenna and I spent hours talking to Eric, planning our next moves. We decided to go public, to tell our story in our own words, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who had ever been silenced, threatened, or afraid. The day of the interview, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The fear was still there, but it was different now. A shadow, not a prison. I dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made me feel strong, grounded, real. The studio was bright, the lights hot on my skin. Jenna sat beside me, her hand in mine, her presence a steady anchor. The interviewer asked gentle, thoughtful questions, giving us space to tell the truth. I spoke about the night I found the hidden room, about the fear and the choices, and the impossible weight of knowing something terrible and not being able to look away. I spoke about Jenna, about friendship and trust, and the courage it takes to stand together in the dark. Jenna talked about hope, how even in the worst moments, we found reasons to keep going, how we learned that secrets only have power if we let them stay hidden. When the interview ended, I felt lighter. The truth was out, not just in evidence and headlines, but in our own voices. We had reclaimed our story. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to rebuild itself. The city changed too. New investigations, new leaders, new conversations about justice and accountability. People stopped us on the street to thank us, to share their own stories, to remind us that what we'd done mattered. Jenna and I found a new apartment, small but bright, filled with sunlight and laughter, and the quiet comfort of safety. We started school again, our lives forever marked by what we'd survived, but no longer defined by fear. Some nights, I still woke from dreams of hidden rooms and watchful eyes, but the nightmares faded, replaced by memories of courage, friendship, and hope. We had stepped into the darkness and found our way back to the light. And as I drifted off to sleep, Jenna's soft breathing beside me, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, because we were survivors, because we were free. The days blurred together, each one a little brighter than the last. The city, once a backdrop for fear, now felt like a place of possibility. Jenna and I walked its streets with new eyes, noticing things we'd missed before, the kindness in a stranger's smile, the comfort of sunlight on our faces, the simple joy of being anonymous again. But even as life settled into a new rhythm, the echoes of what we'd endured lingered. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I'd remember the weight of that secret room, the cold hum of the monitors, the shadows that seemed to press in from every side. Sometimes, I'd wake in the dark, heart pounding, certain I'd heard footsteps outside the door. Jenna understood. She'd wake too, sometimes gasping, sometimes silent, always reaching for my hand. We'd lie there, fingers intertwined, waiting for our breathing to slow, for the fear to ebb. In those moments, we didn't need words, we just needed each other. We started therapy, together and apart. The counselor's office was warm and safe, filled with soft chairs and gentle voices. We talked about trauma, about guilt, about the strange, heavy responsibility of survival. We learned to forgive ourselves for being afraid, for making mistakes, for not being able to save everyone. We learned that healing wasn't a straight line. Some days were easy, filled with laughter, with hope, with the sense that we'd truly left the darkness behind. Other days, the shadows crept back in, whispering doubts and fears. But we kept going, step by step. Together, the city changed too. Baker's arrest sent shockwaves through the community. People who had been silent for years began to speak out about corruption, about abuse, about secrets that had festered in the dark. New leaders emerged, promising transparency and justice. The newspapers ran stories about reform, about hope, about the courage of ordinary people. Jenna and I were invited to speak at a community forum. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. I stood at the podium, my hands trembling, my voice shaking as I began to speak. I used to think that secrets were just part of life, I said, my eyes scanning the crowd, that some things were too dangerous to say out loud. But I learned that secrets only have power if we let them, that the truth, even when it's terrifying, can set us free. Jenna spoke next, her words steady and clear. We were afraid. We still are, sometimes. But we learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act anyway, to trust each other, to believe that the world can change. Afterward, people lined up to thank us, to share their own stories, to ask how they could help. I realized then that what we'd done was bigger than us. It had started a ripple, a wave of change that would keep moving long after our own story faded from the headlines. One evening, as we sat on our tiny balcony watching the city lights flicker to life, Jenna turned to me, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found that room?" she asked softly. I nodded, the memory vivid. All the time. Sometimes I wish I could go back, just for a day, just to feel what it was like to be normal. She smiled, a little sadly. I don't think we ever were, not really, but I think we're better now, stronger. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her presence, for her strength, for the way she'd stood by me when everything else fell apart. "We made it," I whispered. "We really did." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and together we watched the city breathe, alive with possibility. As the weeks turned into months, the nightmares faded. The fear never disappeared completely, but it lost its sharp edges. It became a memory, a warning, a lesson learned. We found new routines, morning coffee at the corner cafe, weekend hikes in the hills, quiet nights spent reading or talking or simply being together. We built a life out of the pieces of our old one, stronger and more beautiful for having been broken. Sometimes people still recognized us. On the street, in the grocery store, at the library, they'd stop to thank us, to tell us how our story had inspired them, how it had given them the courage to speak out, to stand up, to hope. Each time, I felt a surge of pride, of gratitude, of awe at the power of truth. But most of all, I felt free. Free from Baker's shadow, free from the secrets that had once threatened to consume us, free to dream, to hope, to live. And as I drifted off to sleep each night, Jenna's hand in mine, I knew that whatever darkness the world might hold, we would face it together, because we were survivors, because we were brave, because in the end, we had chosen the light. The seasons changed, and with them, so did we. Spring brought a softness to the city, a sense of renewal that crept into our bones. The air was sweet with the scent of blooming trees, and every morning, sunlight spilled through our apartment windows, painting golden stripes across the floor. Jenna and I found ourselves smiling more, laughing at things that once would have seemed trivial. The world felt lighter, as if the weight we'd carried had finally begun to lift. But even as life moved forward, the past lingered in subtle ways. Sometimes, a siren in the distance would make my heart skip. Sometimes, a stranger's glance would send a chill down my spine. There were nights when sleep came slowly, when the memory of that hidden room flickered behind my eyes, a ghost that refused to fade. Yet, with each passing day, those moments grew fewer. The nightmares lost their grip. The fear became a shadow at the edge of my vision, easily chased away by the warmth of Jenna's hand in mine, or the sound of her laughter echoing through our home. We kept busy. Jenna threw herself into her studies, determined to make up for lost time. She joined a campus group focused on social justice, helping others find their voices, just as she had found hers. I started volunteering at a local shelter, listening to stories from people who had lost everything and were trying to start again. Their resilience inspired me, reminded me that survival was only the beginning of the journey. One afternoon, As I was leaving the shelter, I ran into a woman who looked familiar. She hesitated, then approached, her expression tentative. You're the one from the news, aren't you? She asked softly. I nodded, unsure what to expect. She smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you for what you did, for speaking up. You gave people like me hope. Her words warmed me in a way I hadn't expected. I realized then that our story had become more than just a headline. It had become a lifeline for others, a reminder that even the darkest secrets could be brought into the light. When I got home, I told Jenna about the encounter. She listened, her eyes bright with pride. We did that, she said. We made a difference. I nodded, feeling the truth of it settle in my chest. Yeah, we did. Our lives found a new kind of normal. We celebrated small victories, passing exams, making new friends, finding joy in everyday moments. We went to concerts, explored new neighborhoods, tried foods we'd never tasted before. Each experience felt like a reclamation, a way of taking back the life that had once been stolen from us. We still had hard days. There were times when the world felt too loud, too bright, too full of reminders. But we faced those days together, leaning on each other, refusing to let fear win. Jenna started writing, a blog at first, then articles for local magazines. She wrote about courage, about survival, about the power of truth. Her words resonated with people, sparking conversations, inspiring others to share their own stories. I watched her grow, watched her find her voice, and felt a swell of pride that threatened to bring me to tears. She was more than a survivor. She was a force of nature, unstoppable and brave. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the city lights blink to life, Jenna turned to me, her expression thoughtful. Do you ever think about the future? She asked. All the time, I replied, smiling, but it doesn't scare me anymore. She nodded, her gaze distant. Me neither. I used to think the world was a dangerous place, full of things I couldn't control. But now I think it's also full of possibility. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We made it through the worst. Whatever comes next, we can handle it. She leaned her head on my shoulder, her voice barely more than a whisper. Promise? Promise. The city stretched out before us, vast and unknowable, full of stories waiting to be told. For the first time in a long time, I felt ready to write my own. As the months slipped by, we built a life that was ours alone, one defined not by fear, but by hope, by love, by the quiet strength that comes from surviving the unthinkable. We were no longer running from the darkness. We were walking boldly into the light. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, Jenna's breathing steady beside me, I knew that whatever shadows might linger, they would never define us again. Because we were more than what we'd endured. We were free. Summer arrived with a gentle insistence, coaxing the city into full bloom. The days grew long and golden, and even the nights felt softer, less haunted by memories. Jenna and I spent more time outdoors, picnics in the park, lazy afternoons by the river, evenings wandering beneath strings of lanterns at bustling street fairs. The world felt wide open, as if every corner held a new beginning. we were learning to trust again. Trust in the safety of sunlight, in the kindness of strangers, in the rhythm of lives no longer dictated by fear. Yet, there were still moments, fleeting but sharp, when the past would brush against us. A car idling too long outside our building, a news alert about another corruption scandal, the echo of footsteps behind us on a quiet street. But those moments no longer held us captive. Instead, they reminded us of how far we'd come and how much we'd reclaimed. Jenna's writing flourished. Her blog attracted attention from larger publications, and soon she was invited to speak at conferences and workshops. She talked about resilience, about the courage to speak out, about the community that rises up when secrets are finally exposed. People listened, people learned. She was changing lives, one story at a time. I found myself drawn deeper into my work at the shelter. I started a support group for survivors, people who, like us, had been forced into silence by fear or shame. Week after week, we sat in a circle, sharing stories, tears, and laughter. Each session was a reminder that healing was possible, that hope could grow in even the most unlikely places. Sometimes, after a particularly hard meeting, I'd come home and find Jenna waiting for me on the balcony, her face lit by the last rays of sunset. We'd sit together in the hush of twilight, letting the quiet knit us back together. One night, as cicadas sang in the trees and the city glowed with the heat of summer, Jenna turned to me, her eyes reflecting the distant lights. "Do you ever feel guilty?" she asked, her voice barely more than a breath. I knew what she meant. The guilt that lingered, even after justice had been served, the guilt of surviving when others hadn't, the guilt of moving on. Sometimes, I admitted, but then I remember what Eric said, that survival isn't selfish, it's brave, and it's necessary. We can honor what happened by living, by helping others, by refusing to let fear win. She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. I want to do more. I want to make sure no one ever feels as alone as we did. You already are, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Every day, we held each other as the city's heartbeat pulsed around us, a lullaby of distant traffic and laughter and the promise of tomorrow. As the summer wore on, invitations began to arrive. Requests for interviews, for articles, for appearances at rallies and panels. At first, we hesitated. The thought of stepping back into the spotlight was daunting, but we realized that our voices mattered, that our story could be a beacon for others still lost in the dark. We spoke at a rally in the city square, standing before a sea of faces lit by candles and hope. Jenna spoke first, her voice strong and unwavering. "We are not defined by what was done to us," she said, her words ringing out in the warm night air. "We are defined by what we choose to do next, by how we choose to heal, to help, to hope." When it was my turn, I felt the old fear rise up, cold and sharp. But I remembered the faces in my support group, the woman at the shelter, the countless messages from people who had found courage in our story. "We survived because we stood together," I said, my voice steady. "We found light in each other and in the kindness of strangers. If you're listening tonight and you're afraid, know this: you are not alone. there is a way out of the darkness. There is always hope. The crowd erupted in applause, and for the first time, I felt the last of the shadows lift. We had turned our pain into purpose. We had found meaning in the aftermath. Later that night, as we walked home hand in hand, Jenna squeezed my fingers. "I'm proud of us," she whispered. "Me too," I replied, a smile spreading across my face. We stopped on the bridge, watching the river shimmer beneath the city lights. The world felt vast and mysterious, but no longer frightening. We were no longer running from our past. We were running toward our future. And as the night deepened, wrapping the city in a gentle hush, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them side by side, because together we had learned to turn fear into strength, because together we had learned to dream again. Autumn crept in quietly, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson. The air turned crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant bonfires. Jenna and I welcomed the change, wrapping ourselves in sweaters and scarves, sipping hot drinks at our favorite cafe, and wandering through parks where the trees stood ablaze with color. There was a peace to the season, a gentle reminder that life, like the world around us, was always shifting, always offering new beginnings. With the arrival of fall, our lives found a steadier rhythm. Jenna's speaking engagements took her to new cities, and I sometimes traveled with her, sitting in the back of crowded halls, watching her light up the room with her story. She spoke with a quiet authority, her words weaving hope into every heart that listened. Afterward, people would line up to thank her, to share their own stories, to ask how they could help. Each encounter left her both exhausted and exhilarated, her eyes shining with purpose. I continued my work at the shelter, the support group growing with every passing week. New faces appeared, some tentative, some desperate, all searching for the same thing: understanding, acceptance, a path forward. I learned to listen deeply, to offer comfort without judgment, to recognize the courage it took for each person to show up and speak their truth. The group became a family, bound not by blood, but by resilience and the fierce determination to heal. One evening, after a particularly moving session, I lingered in the empty meeting room, the chairs still arranged in a circle. The stories I'd heard that night echoed in my mind, stories of loss and survival, of pain and hope. I realized how far I'd come since the night I discovered the hidden room, how much my own heart had changed. Jenna met me at the door, her arms full of groceries, her cheeks pink from the cold. We walked home together, the city lights twinkling above us, our breath forming clouds in the chilly air. "I saw the news today," she said as we climbed the stairs to our apartment. "Another arrest. Someone else from Baker's network. It's still unraveling." I nodded, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. It's like pulling a thread. The more that comes out, the more people realize how deep it went. She set the groceries down and wrapped her arms around me. "You did that, you know. You started it." "We started it," I corrected, smiling into her hair. We spent the evening cooking together, music playing softly in the background. It was a simple pleasure, but one that felt hard-won, a reminder that peace was possible, that joy could be found in the ordinary. As the days grew shorter, the city prepared for winter. Lights appeared in windows, and the first hints of holiday cheer crept into the air. Jenna and I made plans for the future, talking about trips we wanted to take, projects we hoped to start, dreams we were finally ready to chase. One night, as we sat by the window watching the first snowflakes drift down, Jenna spoke quietly, her voice tinged with wonder. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" she asked. "All the time," I replied, my gaze lost in the swirling snow. "But I wouldn't change it, not if it meant losing what we have now." She smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Me neither." We sat in silence, the world outside muffled and still, the warmth between us a shield against the cold. The holidays arrived, bringing laughter and light. We hosted a small gathering for friends from the shelter, filling our apartment with music, food, and the easy comfort of found family. There was no talk of the past, only stories of hope, of plans for the new year, of gratitude for the simple gift of being together. As midnight approached, Jenna raised her glass, her voice strong and clear. "To new beginnings," she said, her eyes finding mine across the room. "To healing, to never letting fear decide our future." We echoed her words, the toast ringing out like a promise. That night, as we lay in bed, the city quiet and blanketed in snow, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The darkness was still out there, somewhere beyond the glow of our window, but inside there was only light. Winter settled in, and with it came a sense of closure. The investigation into Baker's network reached its end, the last of his associates brought to justice. The story faded from the headlines, replaced by new scandals, new crises, the relentless churn of the world. But for those of us who had lived through it, the impact remained. A scar, yes, but also a badge of survival. Jenna and I marked the anniversary quietly, lighting a candle on the balcony and watching the flame flicker against the night. We didn't need to speak. The silence between us was full of meaning, of gratitude, of love. We had faced the darkness and come out the other side. We had learned to hope again. And as the snow fell softly around us, I knew that whatever the future held, we would meet it together, because we had found our way home, because we were unbreakable.